Hello, everyone. This is the last class of the whole series. I can't believe it. I'm sad and I'm excited and I'm hopeful and I'm a whole swirl of emotions. And I know a lot of you, were posting or emailing me like, that's the last class. I'm so sad. I am keeping the Facebook group open forever. And this is one of the reasons I do it. It's kind of a purely selfish reason, but I can't let go. I think it's an INF thing. I get really attached to people. I've even had it if I switch jobs, I'll get like really sad that the UPS man is going to be going away from me, and I'll like tell the UPS man, like, I feel like I know you. I'm so sad. So with this class, it's like, it's to the 100th degree with that. So that said, I want to say a quick but deep thank you to everyone who took this class. It has been an unbelievable ride. I had no idea what to expect with this class. I've told some of you, like, I kind of loosely plan out my classes. I don't hold to a rigid structure at all. So I don't even really know where we're going when we first start. And then it always unfolds in this really natural, lovely way. But I really do feel like this is one of the most powerful classes I've had yet. People have had breakthroughs, transformations, epiphanies. So many of you have been emailing me that there's like big shifts going on right now for you, and it's synchronicity. And I think that's completely and totally true. So that said, I just want to say thank you, because it took a lot of courage to show up, and it takes a lot of courage to be weird and to embrace your fellow weirdos and say, like, yeah, I'm going to tap into a different side of life, and I'm going to look at things in a different way. And maybe it will be better, maybe it will be worse. I don't really know, but it takes a lot of courage. So thank you, all of you who have been part of this class. It's been really, really amazing. Before the class started, I was actually sitting and kind of tuning in and talking to my guides and saying thank you. And I actually just kind of spontaneously started crying, because it was like I could feel all of you. And there was so much light, like so much really powerful heart energy, this energy of like, I just want to be in my light, and I want to serve, and I want to help. And I get it from all of you. And I'm getting like the tingles as I'm saying that. So again, a huge thank you for being here. So tonight's class is kind of different. In class 1, we talked a lot about boundaries. In class 2, we, dove deep into the narcissism pit. Class 3, we talked about energy fields. But all of those classes, we really talked a lot about energetics. We really talked a lot about sort of the intangible, nay, even mystical side of life, if you will. But we really went into kind of different realms. Tonight's class, I'm going to be doing a little of that. There's going to be some emotional talk, but I'm also going to be really talking about a lot of things that you can do in concrete reality to make connections, to move out of your comfort zone, and to get your work out there in the world. So it's going to be a good mix tonight, but tonight's class is going to be really pretty grounded in contrast to the last 3 classes. So tonight's class, class 4, is publishing and promoting. And I'm going to start with publishing first. I want to get that big piece out of the way, and then I'm going to move on to promoting, which in my mind is an even larger piece. So okay, I'm going to start with publishing, and I'm going to start by giving you my personal story with publishing, because I think it really illustrates a lot. So I started writing in 2006, seriously. And by seriously, I mean I was showing up every week and I was writing a novel, and I was serious about it. I wanted to finish this novel. And even though I hadn't thought that far ahead, I did think that I wanted to publish this novel. I didn't really know what that meant, but I knew that I wanted it out there. So this was way back in 2006, and I had all of these ideas about what publishing meant. I'd always been a big bookworm. I had worked in a bookstore, so I was familiar with the bestseller list, say, or big time names, or Ernest Hemingway's career. Like I had a point of reference for what I thought publishing meant. I didn't know the details, but I knew that I kind of wanted to get there in the big picture. So I finished that book in 2008, and then I started writing another one. And I finished that second book in 2010, I believe, and I started writing another one. And I was polishing these books, I was writing more, but I was also like editing and revising, and I was looking around online, like, what do you do when you have a finished manuscript, And of course, as you'll find, a lot of you probably already know this, a lot of stuff comes up like get an agent. You know, you get an agent and your agent sells your manuscript to a big publishing firm. And then you have a publishing deal, and then you get royalties, and then hopefully you get on the bestseller list, and then you're this made writer, right? It's like being a made man, like you're in, you're good. So that was what I wanted to do. I also had always had this dream of being sort of like a Jack Kerouac figure. That was my thing. I love Jack Kerouac. He really spoke to me, but I also came from a very competitive, achievement-oriented family. My dad was a surgeon. For those of you who've read a lot of my nonfiction books, you might know that, but my dad was a surgeon. His dad was a surgeon. And my dad really wanted me to be a doctor. I did not want to be a doctor. I wanted to be something in the arts, either an actress or an artist or a writer or something. I settled on writer actually kind of later in life. Like I'd always written, but I hadn't really decided I want to be a writer until I started writing. So I had this idea that I wanted to be the next Jack Kerouac. Yes, he was a very spiritual writer, but what really attracted me to that idea was that he had seemed to have made it in a way. He got very famous very fast. A lot of people really idolized him. His books were on like the top 100 books to read in the century, on the road. You know, everybody really saw him as an icon. And that really appealed to me. I wasn't quite sure why, but I wanted that for myself, or I thought I wanted that for myself. So I had these books that I'd written, and they were kind of Kerouacian. You know, they were about my life. Even a lot of the language was very Kerouacian. He was a big influence on me. So I started querying agents. And I think between 2010 and 2014, I queried about 200 agents. And by that time, I had written 3 autobiographical books. And I actually queried all 200 agents 3 times. So I would like send a query on the first book, you know, get the rejection, or sometimes not even get the rejection, but I would like wait 6 months where I was like, okay, they don't want it. They haven't contacted me. And then I would do another round and I would send them the second book, you know, and either wait for the rejection or, you know, so many months would pass where I was like, okay, obviously they don't want it. And then I would send them the third book. And I just kept at it for years. And I got no interest. Like I got no bites. I got nothing. I just got rejections. I didn't even get a request for a partial. Like I just got nothing. And I'd started out really combing through these lists of agents like, okay, you know, I think I write transgressive fiction, and I think I write, you know, sort of like Jack Kerouac type fiction, auto fiction. And then at the end, I was just so desperate that I was like, well, maybe some of my stuff could be urban fantasy. You know, I was like really stretching the limits. I was like, I will take anybody. Like any agent could have taken me and I would have just gone for it. No questions asked. I was just desperate. And as the years went on, I felt worse and worse. I felt like I was a failed writer. Nobody wanted my writing. Something was wrong with me. I didn't get it. You know, I wasn't writing in a genre that was current. I was like stuck in the 1950s with Jack Kerouac and Jean Genet, and everyone else was writing like really trendy young adult stuff that I just wasn't writing. So I felt like a failure on a lot of different levels. Well, what happened after this is I started a writing blog, and then I started coaching. And that kind of unfolded very naturally, and it seemed to unfold separately from my fiction writing aspirations. It seemed to be like a separate thing. And then I got into personality theory, and, you know, I started talking to all these INFJs and INFPs, and I started putting this pattern together. And then a very real problem kind of cropped up where I would get these queries from people. They'd say, I really need coaching. I'm struggling with all the problems you describe on your blog, but I can't afford coaching. And I just thought, you know, or they didn't have the time or the schedule, but there was some block there. They could not do coaching for some reason. And I thought I could just kind of put all this stuff together in a book, like even like a short book, and self-publish it and put it on Amazon. And then at least like they could just go there and buy it. And they would still get the help they need. Like I could lay out all the patterns I saw, and they wouldn't have to like spend all the money on coaching, you know. And also I thought, well, there's only one of me. So if my coaching practice does take off, like that would also be a solution. People could just read the book if I got overbooked. So it wasn't this big grand dream I had about the INFJ writer. I was just like, this is a really logical solution to a problem that I have in my real life. And I thought about it for a minute, like, well, maybe I should try to get an agent based on this. And I knew, like, I'd already done so much research at that point where I was like, I know I have to write a book proposal and I have to get an agent that specializes in nonfiction. And I just got so tired. I mean, I'd already been querying for so long and I was just so tired. And I thought, I don't want to go through all that. I really don't think an agent out there is even going to get this. Like, Myers-Briggs wasn't that big at that time. So I was like, I don't know if I don't want to explain myself to a bunch of people. Like, I could just kind of figure out how to self-publish and just use Amazon, and I could just order copies when I need it and send people there, and that would be easy. So I did it. You know, I put together this book and I put it on Amazon, and I thought that was going to be the end of it. Like, I didn't expect anything else out of it. But what happened that was so surprising was that when I published that book on Amazon, it was just an ebook at first. I didn't even do a paperback. It was in an ebook with like a very simple cover. I'd found this like weird cover designer guy I liked. He charged me like $100. I had this really weird design in my head. I was like, I want this man with like kind of a Samuel Beckett hat and like a Pegasus on his shoulder. And the guy was just like, okay, whatever, you can have whatever you want, you know? So it was cool. I got my little weird cover and I put it on Amazon. But what happened that was so surprising was that I felt so good. Like, I felt this lightness of being. I felt like free, like, oh, wow, sort of inadvertently, I published a book and it's out there. Well, then people started to buy it, you know, just here and there. I wasn't getting that many sales, but like I would sell like 1 or 2 copies like every few days, you know, and then people would email me and be like, hey, I read your book and it helped me. And so slowly, this transformation was coming about. Well, so that was in 2016, that very same year, actually that very same month, it was May of 2016, I published The INFJ Writer. My dad, my high-achieving, high-functioning, severely alcoholic, still doing surgery at the age of 71 father in New York City, total workaholic, got a brain tumor. He was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And he immediately like went into the ICU, had emergency surgery, and he had this very rapid decline. Like, he had to leave New York. We moved him to Michigan, where I'm from. My brother, you know, he like moved in with my brother. My brother was taking care of him. And he was just utterly an invalid, you know, like he'd had the brain surgery. He didn't know where he was. Like, he went from this very vital, thriving workaholic man to this really suffering, ill, I don't even know where I am, cancer patient in a very short amount of time. And then he died. He died in April 2017. It was like 11 months later. So it was very quick. Well, when my dad died, I realized, I had this big epiphany that the whole reason I wanted to be Jack Kerouac, and the whole reason I loved literature, but the whole reason I had spent so much time becoming this expert in literature and wanting to like win the Nobel Prize in literature and have my face on Time magazine and all this stuff, I just wanted to do it to impress my dad. That was really it. I had these huge, like, I want to take over the world dreams that had nothing to do with the world. It was simply an unmet childhood need. I never felt like my dad paid that much attention to me. I thought if I was a big, successful writer, he would finally pay some attention to me. So when he died, I saw all that at once, and I was just sort of able to let go of it. And I still had these manuscripts in a drawer. I still had my first autobiographical novel, my second autobiographical novel, my third, and they were sitting there, and I thought, you know, the self-publishing process wasn't that hard. I could conceivably do this again. I could haul out that manuscript and send it to the same formatter I found for INFJ Writer, and I could, you know, get a cover designer, and same thing. Like, I know the process now. It's not impossible. It's not rocket science. Like, what would happen if I just published my novel myself? So I did it. I published Between the Shadow and Low in August of 2017. I felt completely nauseous for the whole like 2 days of my little launch. That wasn't even a launch because I was so terrified. I actually put it on Facebook. My family and friends knew because I made an announcement, and I was terrified of what they would think and what everyone else would think. And, you know, it wasn't that big of a deal looking back. My family, some of my family members bought it. Some of my friends bought it. The original circle of readers I had given it to, you know, a couple years before when I was still trying to query, and so many people hated that book. So many people said, I can't read this book. I can't get through it. It's too dark. It's an ugly book. Someone actually told me, they were like, it's an ugly book. It kind of is an ugly book. But they didn't really need to put it in those words, you know, but new people bought it. Family members bought it who I really didn't think would like it at all, and read it and sent me very thoughtful comments on it. Old friends, new people, total strangers. And this transformation started coming over me again, where I realized I was really happy. I felt unburdened. I felt like this book had just been sitting in a drawer, and I was so worried and panicked that maybe I would die and never get my stuff published. And the whole time, I could have put it on Amazon at any time. But I had all these hangups. I had all of these beliefs that my writing success, that me as a successful writer, looked a certain way. And it had to look a certain way. I had to have an agent. I had to be traditionally published. You know, I had to be on the bestseller list. I had to sell a certain number of copies. Somebody needed to ask me for movie rights at some point. You know, like I had this whole thing in my mind, and I just was so strongly attached to what it should look like. I was completely unable to see that there was an open door there all along that I could have walked through at any point in time. But I ignored it because it didn't show up in a way that I thought it should show up. It didn't look the way I thought it should look. So I'm telling you all that because so much of the time I work with writers who are just as attached to the writing dream looking a certain way. You know, like I have to have an agent. It has to look this way. I have to have a traditional publishing deal. Nobody will take me seriously. Now, I understand back in 2007, if you were self-publishing, it was really a hard road. It really, really was. I can tell you the game is totally changed nowadays. So many people are self-published, and so many writers have left their traditional publishers, had really good deals with those traditional publishers, and moved over to self-publishing. And I can tell you, I've worked with a lot of writers who work with traditional publishers. And that was another thing I had never seen behind the curtain. You know, so when I started self-publishing, and then I started working with a lot of writers, both, you know, some were self-published and some were traditionally published. I found out that traditionally published writers got 10 to 15% of royalties. Self-published writers get 70% on Amazon and 100% if you're doing it all on your own and putting it on Etsy or something like that, you know, or you're doing like a publish drive or something like that. You get 100% of the royalties. This makes a big, big difference in income. If you're like, I want to be a paid writer, I want to make income off of my books maybe someday, this is something to think about. The other things I found out is that there's a big waiting period. You know, you get an agent, yeah, but that's no guarantee that you get a publisher. And when you get that publisher, it's 12 to 18 months before your book comes out. Self-publishing, you control all that. And I had heard other writers say that. I had a friend who was doing self-publishing before I was, and he tried to talk me into it, and I was very resistant. He was like, Lauren, you get to pick your own cover. You get to have it, you know, any way you want it. You get to format your own chapters. You get to do anything you want. It's all up to you. And at the time, I really didn't appreciate that until I got to do my very weird cover with my guy in the bowler hat and Pegasus on the shoulder. I would not have gotten to do that with traditional publishing. So I'm just throwing this all out there because I know some of you are holding this idea in your mind that like it has to look a certain way, and that if I get published, I can't do it on my own, or I have to have an agent or a publisher to help me with the marketing piece of it because I'm scared of that and I don't know how to do that. I can tell you, I didn't know what I was doing at all, and I figured it out. And I'm a total spaz. Like, I am not this like all put together, totally competent person. I'm really not. I lose stuff all the time. I'm always off in my own head. Like, I don't ever know what's going on. A lot of times I don't know what day of the week it is. And I figured out how to put a book on Amazon. You can too, and there's help out there. So I just want to say all that to say, whatever your idea of the publishing world is, if you have not been published yet, it's probably not accurate because you haven't had the experience. And then there was so much I found when I did start self-publishing. So that's my story. Now I'm going to give you the really quick logistical steps of what it looks like to actually self-publish a book on Amazon. This is going to be really quick, but I just want you guys to see how doable this is. So you write the book, obviously. You might hire an editor. You might not. For me personally, I don't use editors. That is a highly controversial choice. I've had people who are like, I can't believe you don't use editors. What's wrong with you? I don't want to use an editor. I just don't. And it's my book and I'm self-published, so I get to do whatever I want. I don't use editors. If you want to use an editor, you can. I do use a formatter. I have a Kindle formatter because I can't figure that out. So you might hire an editor, probably going to hire that formatter. If you guys need a formatter, contact me. I have a great woman. My formatter charges me like $200, $250 to format the manuscript. Professional editor is going to be much more, but that depends on who you work with. So it's edited, it's formatted. You hire a cover designer. Like I said, my first cover, the INFJ Writer, I think the whole thing cost me like $125, You can find people on Fiverr. You can get book recommendations, cover designer recommendations off of Twitter. But there are people out there. You get your cover, you put it all on Amazon. You use the Amazon KDP dashboard. You can do other outlets and distribution things if you want later down the road. I would start with Amazon KDP. It's pretty easy. My formatter woman, you can also hire her to upload everything for you. If you're like, I don't even want to do that. I am not technically savvy at all. You can hire people who will do everything for you. You're just like, here's the manuscript. I've hired someone to edit it. I've hired someone to format it. And now I'm going to hire someone to put it on Amazon with the cover. It's really, really easy. It's a lot of little steps and you have to email with people and maybe hire some people, but you can figure it out. You don't have to be this super smart technical person to figure any of this out. So that's what it looks like. Really, it's really, really easy. There's other stuff to figure out along the way, like writing your description and keywords and all of that. But you can figure that stuff out along the way. The thing is, with something like Amazon, you can always go back in and change it. My first book, Between the Shadow and Low, when I first came out, my husband designed the cover. Like a year and a half later, both of us were like, we hate that cover. He just designed a new one, and then we swapped it out. If you don't like your keywords, you can go in and put in new keywords. You can change anything at any time. You could change the whole manuscript. Nothing's set in stone. So you have options. Now, I'm telling you guys all this because publishing is not the hard part. It is really one of the parts that so many writers get stuck on. And I told you that personal story to illustrate that I think so many of us get stuck at that publishing point because it's about approval. We're waiting for someone to come in and say, you are a writer. You are a good writer. You are a talented writer. You are talented enough that you can be a professional writer. We will let you in. The agent or the publisher, whoever it is, has read your story and said, this is good, and we're putting a stamp of approval on it. And it's so good, you've made it, you've earned the achievement, that now we're going to do all the marketing for you. So it's this weird thing that plays into a lot of our emotional hotspots, right? It pushes a lot of our buttons where we get the approval we crave. We get the external reward. Someone has told us we're good. Someone has validated that we are a writer. So we get that. But then someone also takes over that marketing piece, of which as INF people, we are so afraid and we're so overwhelmed by. So it's kind of like this irresistible package. It just seems like if I could just get an agent, everything would be solved for me. But I don't know that I'll ever get an agent because it's so hard these days, or I'm not writing anything that could sell, or whatever it is. So we get ourselves in this weird kind of straitjacket of I really want this thing and I really need this thing and this thing's going to solve all my problems, but I also don't think I can ever get this thing, and this thing's really hard to get and there's no way I can achieve it. So it's a really horrible place to be in. But publishing's not the hard part. And that's what I really want you to know. It's not. You could do it. If you have something that's in a somewhat finished state, you could have it up on Amazon in 6 months, easy, inside of 6 months. The hard part, the really hard part for INF people is the promotion piece. It's marketing. And I know all of you guys know this, because when I sent out those emails before the class started and I said, hey, tell me, you know, what you really struggle with, and procrastination and perfectionism, so many people came back and said, I'm terrified of marketing. I don't know how to do it. I don't even really want to know how to do it. It scares me. It overwhelms me. It makes me feel about this big. It makes me feel like I'm never going to learn how to do it. And I don't want to learn how to do it. So I just hate the whole thing. Okay, so let's look at that piece. Let's look at the promotion marketing piece. And let's look at what most writers think it is. And I'll say unpublished writers, but there's a lot of published writers out there too that are still in this camp. So it's not just you. If you're like unpublished, you're like, oh, like everybody knows more than me. So many writers still feel this way about marketing. So what a lot of writers think marketing is pushing yourself on people. That's a big one. INF people kind of live in fear that we will ever be a burden on anyone. We are very, very self-sufficient people, and we are very sensitive to not being wanted, or to feeling rejected, to feeling like other people don't want us around. So a lot of the time we're like so sensitive to it that we'll back off before we've even ever asked for anything. And we really don't want to feel like a burden. This happens with social media a lot too, with INF people, and with sending email newsletters. There's this big block of like, I don't want to be a nuisance. I don't want to be a burden. This shame comes up. And if you'll remember class 2, a lot of this comes from as a child feeling like unwanted, and like our presence was just a burden on people. It can also feel, marketing can feel like bragging to us, or arrogance, you know, like we sort of think to market how everyone else does it is to stand up with this megaphone, say like, look at me, read my book, me. And that feels so repulsive to us. We don't like to be the center of attention really anyway, but we definitely don't want to be the center of attention if we are pushing ourselves on people and being really loud about it and bragging, like, my stuff's so good, you should buy my stuff. That's not for us. It also feels like, along that same vein, attention getting. Like, well, maybe I'll have to kind of do like a bait and switch, or a sleazy marketing tactic where I'm just kind of trying to get attention to lure people in. And that is not for INF people either. INF people are not interested in sort of short-term attention, or sort of like cheap tricks to get attention. We see through that in other people. We don't like it. We don't want to be that person. Marketing can also feel like we have to know everything, or we have to be the expert. If we think about, well, you know, what if someone asks me to be on a podcast, or I'm interviewed, you know, or I'm even interviewed on someone's blog, you know, or I put out a self-help book on a certain topic, and then people are turning to me and I'm supposed to have all the answers on that topic. So that can really make INF people kind of shrink into the shadows as well, because it's funny, because most of us are actually experts on a lot of different topics. We are very intellectual. We soak up a lot of knowledge, and we do really deep research, but we also refuse to believe that we could ever be an expert. And I think it's because we're natural lovers of learning, and we know that there are no true experts, you know, so we're never going to call ourselves an expert. But it can feel like that when we think about marketing, like, well, then I'm going to have to be the expert, and I'm really uncomfortable with that. So if you think about all these things, arrogance and bragging, attention getting, pushing yourself on people, being a know-it-all, if you put all those together, it sounds a lot like the package of narcissistic traits that we have dealt with people in our lives, whether we figured out we had narcissistic parents or a past relationship. We know that dynamic well, that sort of person who's just filled with bravado and is just very charming and is kind of full of hot air, you know, is a fake or a phony. We don't want to be a fake or a phony. And the thought of that, and the thought of all those traits, and we might have to enact that role to be good at marketing, to promote ourselves. We might have to step into some of that icky energy. That makes us go into protection mode. Now, if you remember class 2, we talked about growth versus protection mode. Protection mode, the walls go up. We retreat into our shell, right? All the entrances and exits, they're closed off because we are in protection mode. When you're in protection mode, nothing can get in. The nutrients can't get in. The new experiences can't get in. You're not growing. If you're in protection mode, marketing's simply not going to work, because marketing is actually not about all that stuff I just named. It's not an individual standing in the center of an audience going, me, 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 me. It is not that at all, even though you will see a lot of that kind of marketing out there in the world. That's very common. But real marketing, the most effective marketing, especially for INF people, is much different. The marketing that's me, 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 pushing myself, that's very achievement-oriented marketing. You are trying to hit a certain goal, and that's when you get the people in the boardroom at the company who are sitting around like, well, who's our demographic? And, how can we hit them in the pocketbook? That's achievement-oriented marketing. That's seeing people as numbers. You just want this result. You don't really care who gives you the result. You just want the result. We are going to be shifting to relationship-oriented promotion. So what that looks like, it's much different. That looks like speaking your truth, your real truth, even if it's scary. Being your authentic self, your real authentic self, even if it's scary. Making new friends. Now, I know that sounds simultaneously simplistic, like we're in kindergarten, and also totally terrifying to INF people who are very ambivalent about making friends. Like, we love people, but we're really scared when it comes to making new friends. But it's honestly really about making new friends, like real friends, authentic friends. It's about offering kindness and encouragement to others who are traveling the path with you. I know that sounds so weird that I'm telling you marketing and promoting yourself is about offering kindness and encouragement to others traveling the path with you. That sounds like a spiritual thing. It is. Like, it's the same as relationship-oriented marketing. Relationship-oriented marketing is a spiritual thing. It's about collaborating on fun projects with other people that you actually really like. Not signing up for stuff with people who you feel like they're kind of sleazy or icky, or you guys just aren't on the same wavelength, but you're grinning and bearing it. That's not marketing. At least that's not the marketing that we need to do. With relationship-oriented marketing, you can be really picky. You can only do things that feel good to you, that feel good in your body, in your heart, in your mind, and that will actually work the best. It's about learning new things. And this is something that INFs forget so much. We're so terrified of promoting ourselves. We're so scared that, someone's going to think that we're a burden, or we're being pushy, or we've sort of like become this inauthentic, fake person. We're so scared of that all of the things we need to learn about marketing don't even seem like fun, even though we're natural learners. And we naturally like puzzles and challenges. We like to figure things out with other people. That brings us alive. That is what marketing is all about. It's figuring things out with other people, but we lose sight of that. And it just sounds like it's scary and overwhelming. I don't want to learn any of that, even though we love to learn. It's about experimenting with your comfort zone. And it's about challenging yourself. And that's another thing. And this goes back to the energy fields. When you're in the energy fields of fear or shame, like if you feel like, oh, like me promoting myself is me being a burden on other people or a nuisance, and you go into that shame field, the challenge of marketing is not going to be it's not going to be something that you'll be able to meet, because you will be in such a low power field, right? For those of you who are reading Power versus Force, you're only going to be at like a 20. You're not going to have very much power available to you at all. So figuring out something like, how do I put a nice picture on Twitter, is going to seem like this huge obstacle because you're in shame. If you can raise yourself, up into courage, acceptance, willingness, even neutrality is a pretty high one of like, well, this is an experiment. Let's see how it goes. You're going to have a lot more power available to you. And you'll be like, okay, I can figure this thing out on Twitter. It's kind of like a fun little challenge. I can do it. So this is the shift from achievement-oriented promoting yourself to relationship-oriented promoting yourself. it looks way different. And something to keep in mind, you're going to be one of the few people out there doing this. Just because you might have a big epiphany about, oh, wow, marketing can be fun and connected and authentic, and I can actually like it, and I can come to it with this sort of compassionate, humanistic point of view, you're still going to see all the sleazy marketing tactics out there, right? You're still going to see the TV ads that you hate and the billboards, and mainstream culture is going to be there. That's okay. You're not trying to change the world. You're not trying to convert everyone. You're just working on yourself. You're just working on your one little piece and how you personally feel about marketing. This is really, really local. This is really, really small. This is an intimate thing between you and yourself. Okay, so all that said, I'm going to show you, I'm going to tell you what marketing looks like for me, like personally, what I did to market myself and get where I am right now. So I started with nothing. Like, I started a blog on writing in 2013. That was it. I hadn't published anything. I didn't have a business. I was an admin at a company, and I started this writing blog. And I started writing articles. I just kind of wrote like what I felt. I also started a Twitter account. I really didn't like social media that much. I didn't care for Facebook. I still really don't care for Facebook. I'm on it because of the group, but I don't look at my stream. I'm not there a lot of the time. I'm not on Instagram, but I chose one social media platform that looked interesting to me, that I thought I could experiment with, and it was Twitter. So I started my blog and I started a Twitter account, and I started a separate email address. And the separate email address was just going to be like my writing email address, and it was just for everything writing related. So I went on Twitter and I looked around and I followed people. And I still do this. This is still one of my, I guess, marketing tactics, but this is how I make connections with people. I go on Twitter and I look at accounts, popular writing accounts. So I look at like NaNoWriMo. I look at Writer Unboxed. I look at Jane Friedman. I look at Writer's Digest. Like, there's a bunch of them out there. Writing prompts. You can go on Twitter and you can find a bunch of different writing accounts. And then I looked at who followed those writing accounts. And anyone who looked interesting to me, I followed them. And it could be anybody. They didn't have to write in the same genre I did. They didn't have to be the same as me. They could be like a very religious, Christian housewife who wrote like middle grade fiction books about horses. And I was like, cool, she's a writer. I like horses. I'm spiritual, like I really had kind of like a wide spectrum of like, yeah, I could connect with this person. We have stuff in common. And I just followed people, I didn't like bombard people. I just followed some people. And then I check back in, a few days later, I'm like, did anybody follow me back? And some people will follow you back. Every time when you follow people, people follow you back. And if there was something in their bio that resonated with me, if they were like, oh, like I really like turtles. I'm like, I like turtles too. And I would just tweet at them and be like, hey, I saw in your bio that you like turtles. I think turtles are cool. Sometimes they would answer me back. Sometimes they wouldn't. I also looked at people's bios, and if they were interesting and they had a blog of their own, I would go visit their blog and I would follow it. And I used the email address that I had created separately, so I could have all of these different blog notifications in one place. Well, after I did this for a few months, I had a follower list, and I'd been talking with some people on Twitter, and I had a list of really cool blogs that came into my inbox. And every few days I would look over my list of the blog articles that came through, and I would share a bunch of them on Twitter, whatever looked good. And then slowly over time, those people noticed I was sharing their stuff. So they started sharing my stuff right back. Now, not all the time. And I never contacted anyone like, oh yeah, this is a really great business opportunity, and I need to hook up with her because she's got a large audience. Like, I never had that thought in my mind. I literally just went on Twitter like, there's some interesting people here, let's see what these people are about. And anybody who had anything interesting in their bio, a snippet of poetry, a mention of Native American studies, anything, I just talked to them, or I followed them, or I followed their blog. I just kind of kept them on my radar. Some of it panned out, some of it didn't. Some people for no reason at all would just block me. Like I would follow them and they would block me. And I was like, what did I do to you? You know, and I went through the whole, like, I've been rejected. Other people I got in conversations with, and then we moved it to email, and we ended up being like really close real life friends and working on projects together. You never know which way it's going to go. So, but the thing is, if you are in protection mode, right? If you are still like, marketing's scary, I don't want to do it. I don't want to be pushy or a nuisance. I'm in shame, or maybe I'm in fear. I feel really overwhelmed and I'm going to have to be the expert and people are going to expect things. If you're in one of those lower energy fields and then you're in protection mode, you're not going to be able to bring this open energy to something like Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or whatever you're using, where you don't need to be on the defensive and you don't need to be protecting yourself from people, and you're not in competition with people. And that's the thing. If you're in these lower energy fields and you're trying to connect with other writers, you're going to see other writers as a threat. You're going to see them as competition, or they're doing better than you, or like they're successful and you're not. Like there's some sort of like inferiority, superiority scale, and you're coming out on the short end. If you're in a higher field, if you're in neutrality, if you're in joy, if you're in curiosity, willingness, you see these other people as really genuinely interesting people. Like you're just interested in them. You're not even thinking about yourself anymore. You're not thinking about like, well, I'm not even published yet. They're not gonna be impressed with me. Or like, I have one book out, but it has a bad review. They're gonna, like, you're not even thinking about that stuff. You are not thinking about yourself. You're just interested in them. And you just kind of throw out a line. Sometimes you get a tug, sometimes you don't. So what all this led me to, and this was like a slow buildup, you know, I had a couple Twitter friends for years who we just sort of would say thank you to each other on Twitter, you know, or just like chat a little bit here and there. And after 5 years, we moved it to email and then ended up doing really cool collaborative projects together. So a lot of these things are going to be long term. And I know a lot of you went to the INF Summit, the virtual summit that I did earlier this year with my friend Jazz Hothi. So Jazz was one of those. I knew him from Twitter for years. I mean, like since I was on Twitter. And I would always see like his account at first, I think was Awkward Brown Guy. So I didn't know his real name. But I was always like, Awkward Brown Guy is really cool. I really like him. You know, so I would tweet him like, hey, Awkward Brown Guy, like I loved your latest blog, because he would write on HSP stuff. Well, then, you know, I think in like 2018, finally, we started talking over email. And then I got this, like 2019, he had emailed me and I got this intuitive nudge. And I said, can we do a Zoom call? We'd never talked before. We got on. And I said, this is so weird. And I know you don't really know me that well, but I just feel like we're supposed to do a summit together for INF people. And he was instantly like, oh, I'm in. Like, that is so crazy, but I'm in. And I'd never done a summit before. He had never done a summit before. We had no idea what we were doing. But I was like, it just sounds fun. It just sounds like it would be really fun. He was like, yeah, I agree. I think it would be totally fun. And we had fun the whole way through. Like, we were kind of stressed at some points, but really for the most part, we just had fun. And that's what real relationship-oriented marketing looks like. You know, it's just getting to know people. So those are like my 3 go-to marketing things. Like, I'm on Twitter and I'm friendly to people and I just talk to people. I follow other people's blogs and content and I share their stuff. And then I collaborate with other people, you know, by doing summits, or like, you know, my friend KM Wheeland, you guys might know her from Twitter if you're on Twitter, but she has like authors helping authors. But she'll do like a sale sometimes, like, you know, a bunch of us will get together and put our book on sale the same day. So it's like, oh, 9 books, 99 cents, you know, right now for one day only. That stuff really helps. And that's really fun too. And it's a fun, friendly thing. We're not in competition with each other. I'm not worried about if she's more successful than I am. Like, she's just a nice, friendly person. And we work together to do stuff that's pretty fun. So that's a lot of stuff about marketing. And I know some of you are like, okay, well, that's all well and good. Like, I'm in the energy field of joy. I'm feeling different about stuff. Like, I want to do this relationship-oriented marketing thing. But the truth is, like, I don't know where to focus my efforts. There's so much stuff out there. Like, do I do paid advertising? Am I trying to get interviews? Like, Am I trying to write my self-help book before my fiction? Like, what do I do? So this is the only really concrete marketing thing I'm going to talk about in this class. The big kahuna of relationship-oriented marketing, it's the email list. If you choose only one thing to do, if you're like, I am so overwhelmed, coronavirus is going on, racial injustice is all over the world, I'm depressed, I can't do anything, I can only do one thing this year. Build your email list. Really, that is the only thing. If you take one thing from this class, if you take one thing from ever talking to me, build your email list. When people say you have to build your platform before you get published, and your mind goes crazy and you're like, oh my God, I have to have like a really slick logo and I have to have a blog with all this content. I have to make videos and I have to do it. Okay, just stop and pull back. If you are building your email list, you've got your platform. Really, if you've got an email list of people who are into you and they like your stuff, they're interested in your stuff, they've given you permission to email them, you might have only 50 people on that list. You really have a solid foundation. You really, really do. For those of you who are like, okay, I'm totally into this, what do I do? Or like, how do I get people on the email list? And should I do an email newsletter or should I do a blog? I had a client the other day. She was like, both of them take so much time and like, I don't want to send all these newsletters. So if you're freaking out about the email list, like, I don't want to send all these newsletters, it's too much, I don't have that much to say, I want you to pull back and know you don't have to send newsletters to people just to send newsletters. You don't have to have this email list and be emailing people every day. You don't have to be spamming people. You don't have to have these really catchy taglines. You don't have to do any of that crap, really. I have an email list. It works very well. It's very solid. I build it all the time. I don't do any of that stuff. You guys are on my email newsletter list. So you probably notice like sometimes 3 weeks or a month will go by and I don't send out a newsletter because I'm busy or I'm tired or I legitimately have nothing to say. I don't make stuff up just to send a newsletter. I just don't. It's not worth it. When I have something to say, which I will, something will pop up, I'll send it to people. It's not a big deal. So you can have a very casual email list. You don't have to have this like glossy, slick design and be sending things twice a week and these, great catchy subject lines that make people click. And you don't have to do any of that. As long as you are authentically putting yourself out there in a way that says, hey, I have an email list. I would love it if you join. And you are actively doing that on an ongoing basis. And you're building that email list, you're golden. So here's the difference, by the way. Here's the difference between your email list and say your blog, or your videos. Once you get to that point, you're going to want to be creating content so people can find you, right? So they even know you exist because the internet's a big place. I get that. Your blog and videos, your articles on Medium, all that stuff you're thinking of, that's like, if we're looking at an M&M, that's like the candy shell, right? That is the outermost circle. That is just you with a billboard. That's advertising. That's just you waving a little flag that's like, hey, I'm over here, I write stuff, and here's what I write about. A lot of people are going to zoom right past that stuff. They might slow down a little bit, not really stop. Some people will stop. So that content, that's like you going to a party with a bunch of strangers, right? You walk into the party, everybody there is a stranger. You might talk with some people, you might be like, yeah, I need to be more outgoing. I need to push myself because I'm an introvert. I know all of us have been at that party. I'm going to talk to people. I'm a network. So you push yourself, you make those conversations, and not much comes of it, and that's okay. Your email list is you walk into this party full of strangers and you see a group of your coworkers over in the corner. Actual people you've worked with them at the same office for like 3 years. Maybe you don't love them. Maybe they're not your best friends. Maybe they're not totally on your wavelength, but you know them. They know you. You know a little bit about each other. There is a level of trust and intimacy there. And all of a sudden, the party doesn't seem so daunting, right? You don't feel so alone. That's your email list. And that is the thing that so many INF people, I think, miss about the email list, because we think this email list is like going to be this list of like nameless, faceless people. And we need to be sending them things that impress them and draw them in and get them to buy our stuff. That is not at all what your email list needs to be like. I know business people who have email lists like that. Like they don't know anybody on their email list. They just kind of like send out, automated emails 3 times a day. And they're like, whatever, like I'm selling stuff. That's not what I do. I know the people on my email list. I don't know all of them, but I know a lot of them, honestly. And that's why all of you have probably seen before a class, I will send out the thing that's like, hey, I'm making this thing. What do you guys think? What are your top 2 questions? What are your top 2 problems? And I get so much stuff back from you guys and from other people. And some people never join a class. They never buy one thing from me. But they'll send me a little email and be like, hey, this looks cool, or like good work, or I think you should do this, So I have that interaction. These are not nameless, faceless people. These are your people. This is your community. These people are going to help you. When you do launch that book, even if there's only 30 people on your email list, when you launch your book, if you have been engaging with them in a real, authentic, heart-centered way, a lot of those people on that list, a lot of those 30 people, they're going to buy your book. And you're not just trying to push it on them. You're not like, yeah, I just want sales. I just want numbers. Like, there are people who are genuinely interested in your stuff and who you could genuinely be of service to them, but having them on your email list is the very best way to do that. So if this is resonating with you, if you're like, okay, I think I'm on board with this email list thing. I'm a little bit nervous and hesitant and very reluctant, but I'm maybe halfway there because Lauren is talking about it so much. Send me an email. I have a business course. Don't buy it off my website. I'll give you guys a steep discount, or we can work it out or whatever. But I have all this stuff in a video course all about launching your online business. And I talk about the email list a lot. Or if you just are like, I just want some quick and easy tips and pointers, email me and I will help you out. Okay, but I want to shift away from that and go back to the emotional energetics of promoting yourself. And then I want to get to questions because I know this is our last class. So I'll run through this really quickly. Okay, so the emotional energetics of promoting yourself. Everything we have talked about in the class up until this point ties into this. The first one, boundaries. So many of you have said you are terrified of promoting yourself because you're going to be exposed to criticism. You might offend people, or you're just going to be exposed. People will just have access to you, which for a lot of INFs is really, really scary because we're so private. So this is where the first class really comes into play, boundaries. And this is why we want to be practicing our boundaries all the time. And we want to have really, really strong, appropriate boundaries. I get emails from people all the time that I need to put the boundary in place. I get emails from very lonely, very depressed people. I'll get an email out of nowhere from a guy who's like, I think I'm about to have a nervous breakdown and you're the only person in the world I can talk to. And here's 4 pages of just block text, all in caps. And I have to put up the boundary. I'm so sorry. That man really looks like he's in a lot of pain. I send him love and light. I cannot respond. It's not my place to do so. He actually doesn't know me. I don't know him. We don't have any sort of trust bond. Now, back in the day, that was really hard for me. For many years, I would get an email like that and be like, oh my God, this person's in pain. What if he does have a nervous breakdown? I could be his only lifeline. I need to respond to him right now. And I would send big, long emails back to people like, I'm so sorry. What can I do? I'm here. I'm here to listen to you, whatever you need. I'm your friend. That really wasn't helping them either. Because as much as I wanted to help, and that came from a really good, well-intentioned place, I have a big heart, I wasn't slowing down enough to say, I actually don't have a bond with this person. I actually don't know this person. We don't know each other. And this isn't really appropriate for us to get into. So you want to have those boundaries in place so that you can go on social media and you don't feel like you have to, respond to every notification or be on it every day or like it's too overwhelming. Also, you can self-publish your book on Amazon, and it's okay if a family member has a really strong reaction to it or kicks back. There's a backlash because you have that boundary in place. So the boundaries are really, really important in so many ways. Growth versus protection mode. This goes back to class 2. We talked about that as well. When you are promoting yourself, when you are in the publishing process, you got to be in growth. You got to let new stuff in. There's going to be so much new stuff and you're going to be learning. There is a learning curve, it gets easier, but when you're in protection mode, you can't navigate that learning curve as well, if at all. The energy fields, again, we talked about this, just even earlier in this class. If you're on Twitter and you're trying to make connections and new friends and explore and kind of be curious about people, if you're in shame and guilt, you're going to see all other people as a threat. You really will. All other people will seem negative to you or menacing, or perhaps they're out to get you. Now, sometimes, yeah, you do need to be on your guard on social media. You don't want to post your home address on Twitter, obviously. You don't want to post like intimate photos of yourself on Facebook, obviously. But if you have the boundary part in place, for the most part, you could trust your intuition and you can trust people online and you can trust yourself that like, if someone's weird with you, you can just cut them off or block them or not respond to them. And if you're in an energy field, a higher energy field, you're honestly not going to attract as much of that stuff anyway. You're not going to attract the people who are also in shame and guilt and fear and in kind of like those low, weird energy, denser, lower fields. Another thing that's going to come up that you're going to have to deal with as you promote yourself is going to be old beliefs about your parents and your family and your tribe, the tribe you were born into, your biological family. This is something that so many INF people don't even really think of when they're starting to think about promoting themselves in marketing. It's really helpful to actually look at your beliefs around money. And I know some of you might cringe the instant I say money because, oh, I don't like money. I'm not good at money. And others of you are like, what does money have to do with marketing? I'm so confused. Money has to do with everything. Money has to do with your creativity. It has to do with your life force, has to do with your sexual energy. Money is tied into all that stuff. And money is usually sort of this vehicle of ingrained beliefs that our family hands down to us. So you will see a lot of times with writers, if they really dig down into some of their blocks, it's that I can't be more successful than my family members. I can't be more successful than my parents. I can't be more successful than my brothers or sisters. Or it might be, I can't be more successful than my social circle, right? Like, and a lot of that is money. I can't earn more money, right? I can't live in a nicer house. I can't drive a nicer car. I can't live at a higher level. I can't take more luxurious vacations, or I can't travel at all. But there's all these beliefs that if I outshine my family in this area, if I, get some sort of success and that translates into monetary success, then I'm going to be rejected from my tribe. My mom and dad are going to have a problem with it. That's as simple as it gets. So we really want to look at those old beliefs about what your parents think about success, what your parents think about your success, your siblings, your friends, even your spouse. Everybody has a ceiling. Everybody has a money ceiling and a money success ceiling, right? So like, it's okay to earn $80,000 a year. It's not okay to earn $140,000 a year, right? Or it's okay to be a teacher. It's not okay to be the superintendent of the school district, whatever it is. Like there's usually some sort of like place in the hierarchy that your family and your tribe, they feel comfortable there. And if you want to be a writer, you want to be an artist, you're moving beyond that, and that's threatening. And again, a lot of you have mentioned you've come from families where art is not valued. Pursuing art as a career is definitely not valued. There's no merit in it. Or people are asking like, well, how are you going to make money at that? So it's like this weird double-edged sword where a lot of family members are questioning, how are you going to make money at that? But then they're also sending the sort of mixed message, you better not make more money than I do at that. So either way you go, you're like, well, I can't really make anyone happy, so I guess I'm just not going to do this at all. So really, once you start clearing away all this stuff, once you start doing the boundary work, clearing away the old energy, the old beliefs, figuring out where this stuff is coming from and how you want to move past it, what your beliefs are, all of that is going to connect you more deeply to your true self. And that's what we've been working on in this class, connecting to your true self. The more you connect to your own heart, your own mind, your own soul, stuff's going to start happening. Old people in your life are going to fall away. New people are going to come in. opportunities are going to show up, and some of them you're gonna be like, wow, that was there all along and I never saw it, like I did with the self-publishing, where I was like, I just never saw it. Some things are gonna be totally new. We're gonna be like, wow, I got asked to go on a lecture tour and I never saw that coming, but new stuff is going to show up, because as you let go of things, as you let go of old baggage, old hurts, old wounds, old beliefs, old energy, you are freeing up room. You are freeing up space in your energetic field, and that space will be filled, and it will be filled based on the energy field you're in, right? So if you let go of a ton of stuff and you've got all this space, and then you sit there very strongly in shame for the next 6 months, the stuff that comes into your field is going to be vibrating at that level of shame, because like attracts like. That's the law of attraction. That's really the law of attraction that so many people don't talk about. It's not just visualization. It's not just hoping and wishing. It's working on the energy that you're in. So, okay, I'm going to take questions from you guys, and we might go a few minutes late tonight because I just want to make sure I really answer all of your guys' questions. So Laura says, you look very nice tonight. Thank you. That was a private message, but thank you, Laura. I really appreciate that. And I just want to say, you guys, before I get on these calls, I am always like totally nervous. Like, I'm like, I can't talk to these people. They're going to think I'm crazy. So when you guys are like, oh, you did great tonight, I'm like, thank you so much. Like, that really bolsters me. Frank says, do podcasts play into marketing, and how? So Frank, podcasts are really great for marketing. I have never pursued a podcast on my own. Like, usually podcast people will contact me, but they're a lot of fun. And there's so many people out there who are just starting up their podcasts. I always get a spike in sales or new client inquiries or emails. Like, I always get a little spike when I do a podcast, and I always make a connection. Like, I just did a podcast by the Moonlight Writers podcast. And it was 2 women, and they were just lovely. They were a little bit more extroverted than me. So I was like, wow, that was kind of a lot, but they were really great. And I ended up buying the one woman's book. It's like a YA fantasy, and I'm totally going to read it. And now we're friends. So podcasts can be really fun. Laura says, how do I build an email list if I am a fiction writer? It seems easier to build an email list if you are a nonfiction writer and offering an expertise in something. Well, Laura, it does and it doesn't. There are so many possibilities. Like, I have, one of my friends is this fiction writer, Amanda Linehan. She's great. If you guys should check her out. She's an INFP, and she is so nice. But she writes a bunch of stuff like YA and thriller. And she does, you get a free short story if you join her email list. And I think she does like a free short story a month, but she does a bunch of things. Like, if you're on her newsletter list, you get little perks. I have another client, Alice Archer, and she does mail romance that is so good. But she does a bunch of really cool stuff for her newsletter list, like, behind the scenes world building, or maps of, the island where one of the characters lived. Like, she does a lot of like really in-depth stuff if you're into her novels. And they're sort of like little treasures that she only gives her newsletters, subscribers. So there's so many different things you can do. Basically, though, it's gifts. No matter if you're nonfiction or fiction, it's free gifts. That's how you build your email list. And Laura, email me about my video course and I'll send that to you, because it really talks about free gifts and how to build a free gift and how to position your free gift and why you want a free gift. So let's see. Brittany says, how do you feel about publishing under a pen name? Bad idea, good idea, cowardly fun? Well, Brittany, that depends. It depends on why you're doing it. So I have a few different clients. I actually have 2 different clients who are both men, and they're both in their 60s, and they write erotica under a pen name. One of them writes books under his real name elsewhere on different topics, just like straight normal fiction about, like literary fiction. And then the other guy doesn't write anything else. He just writes erotica. But both of them have different reasons for choosing a pen name. Like the one guy who only writes erotica, he's like, no one even knows I'm a writer. Like, my whole writer identity is my pen name. So he's on Twitter, he's on social media, but like, you never see his face. I think he's got a blog. So he's got this whole writer identity, but it's all under a pen name. And he's really active in the erotica community. My other writer friend, or I'm sorry, my other writer client who writes erotica, but he also writes literary fiction, he doesn't want to get the two mixed up, right? Like he feels like they're two totally separate brands for him. So he's like, I don't want my lit audience people to know I write erotica, and I don't want my erotica audience people coming over into the literature side. So I get it. They both have different reasons. So it really depends on what your reasons are. If you're like, I'm really only writing under a pen name because I'm just scared, like it's just all fear, and I think this is going to be a problem down the road when maybe I get over that fear and I want to tell my family that I'm a writer, then that's something to think about. Like maybe you just want to right out of the gate, you know, go with your real name. Let's see. Rui says, what do you do to get to the paper version of your books? I think, are you asking how, I think you're asking how do you get it so there's a paperback version of your books on Amazon, I'm thinking. So it took me a while to figure that out, because when I first did the INFJ writer, I just did an ebook because I told my cover design guy, I was like, oh, I just want a cover. And he was like, oh, you just want the front cover? And I was like, yeah, I guess, I don't know. Now I know, like you just tell your cover designer, hey, I need an ebook cover and I need a paperback cover. And they'll give you two versions. And it's pretty easy on Amazon. And like I said, I have a formatter woman. She's amazing. She knows Kindle backwards and forwards. She can upload all that stuff for you if you want. But you just upload it all to Amazon. So you're like, here's my ebook cover. Here's my paperback cover. And then you can order it off Amazon and they print it. It's super, super easy. Let's see. Beth says, with your email list, are you distinguishing between students, coachees, and your writing contemporaries? I worry about cannibalizing my students. So Beth, this actually goes back to when I was talking about my client who writes lit fiction and then he writes erotica. For him, he wants to keep everybody separate. He's got two totally separate things, right? So he's got separate websites, separate email lists, like it's separate. Me, I don't do that. I've got everybody in one place. And in the beginning, I was really worried about it. I write, my self-help is really like light and love and mystical and spiritual. It's very new age, right? And then my fiction is like the exact opposite. Like I write transgressive fiction. It's really intense and graphically sexual and kind of violent or just weird, like weird and gross in a lot of places. And so I really had hesitancies about mixing the two. And then I've got people who just want coaching. I've got some people who are like, I don't care at all about any of your books. I just want coaching or, I want something else. But I just kind of send everybody everything. And I feel like people will self-select themselves out. If at some point they're like, well, I liked that Lauren Sapala chick because she's kind of new age, but then she sent me something on transgressive fiction and I just can't even stomach that. They'll just unsubscribe, And that's the other thing I want to bring up really quickly about email lists. And this is a point that so many INF people get stuck on. So many INF writers, they'll have an email list and then they'll send something out and people will unsubscribe, which is really, really normal. And that freaks them out. They're like, oh my God, I did something wrong. People are unsubscribing. Like that's the worst thing that could happen. And so what they'll start trying to do is like shape themselves or mold themselves or their message so that they don't get unsubscribes. Like, well, I want to please everybody in my audience. I want to make sure that like the greatest number of people stay. The thing is, when people unsubscribe, they are doing you the biggest favor ever because very quickly they are taking themselves out of the game. They are letting you know this is not a match and they're just taking themselves elsewhere. You are not wasting any more time or energy on them. And the way I always explain this to people, this is the weirdest way in the world to explain this, by the way. I'm so glad all of you guys are INFs because this is so weird. It's kind of like when you think about Charles Manson recruiting people into the family, right? So Charles Manson did start off nice, but relatively quickly, he really was very much himself with the new recruits, right? Where he was like, I'm going to change your name. Like you're going to have a new name. We're having an orgy tonight. You're expected to participate. Oh, and also you're expected to go cook up and some stuff in the kitchen and clean up everything after me. And I now own you, So the people who didn't like that, the people were like, oh, like, I actually have boundaries, or this seems weird, or I don't want you to change my name. They left immediately. They were like, that guy's really weird. And I think he's like a cult leader, or he's like into mind control. Like, they left. Charles Manson knew what he was doing because he didn't want to waste time on most people. Right out of the gate, he was like, this is who I am. I am Charles Manson. Here I be. You take me or leave me. And the people who stayed were really, really strong recruits. They were really into it. Same thing with your email list. The people who unsubscribe, they weren't matches anyway. They were not in alignment with you. They did not want what you were doing. The people who stay, the people who get like, your writing stuff and your teaching stuff, like the people on my list who get my transgressive fiction stuff and my INFJ stuff and my weird shamanism stuff. And they're like, yeah, I'm still down. Like, I'm in for all of this. Those are my people. We are really, really a high compatibility match. So right out of the gate, and this is just my opinion, I just want to give people everything. I'm not trying to fit a certain niche. I'm not trying to mold myself so that a certain market will like me. I'm just kind of like, this is everything I'm interested in. If you're into it with me, that's so awesome. If you're not, best of luck to you. Have a nice life. Let's see. Okay, Teal says, are there requirements for self-publishing on Amazon? Like, do they review it before they will sell it? No. They will. They have like an automatic scanner thing. So if you have a bunch of typos, they'll let you know. Like, I think I had like 25 typos in the INFJ writer. And I just was like busy. Like, seriously, I know that's a bad excuse, but for like 2 years I was busy. And finally Amazon was like, they sent me this message like, bro, you have 25 typos. Like, if you don't clean these up, we're going to have to take your book off Amazon. I was like, oh, okay. But even that was super easy. Like, I went into the dashboard and it showed me every typo, and I could either click like fix or ignore. It was so easy. So I fixed those typos like in 10 minutes, and then it was back on sale. So no, they will not review it. There's like no standard, really. Like, there's nothing. I mean, the standards all come back to not that Amazon's going to review it, but more it's going to like bite you in the ass down the road. So if you, like, for instance, if you write a 2,000 page novel, you can totally put that on Amazon. However, because it's 2,000 pages and it's actually so much paper, the paperback version, Amazon is going to make it so that you have to sell that at like, $17, just because it's so much paper. But if you have a normal sized novel, you can set your own price. There will be a minimum just to cover the printing cost, but that's it. And then Amazon takes its cut. Other than that, like, there's no standard. You have to mark if it's like an over 18 book, or not, but like, that's pretty much it. Natasha says, I'm having trouble getting anyone to sign up to my newsletter. There seems a huge increase in people trying to use the email list this year. I've tried the freebie thing too. So Natasha, you should email me. We can talk about that. But the thing that I found most helpful, so you have your free gift set up with your email list, and then you're also creating content that leads people to the free gift. So you can see how I do this. Like, if you go to YouTube, a lot of my videos, I talk about a topic that I cover in my book, Firefly Magic. And then it's usually like a really simple topic. And then at the end of the video, it's like a 10-minute video, I hold up the book and I'm like, hey, if this resonates with you, like if you know what I'm talking about, I cover this in my book. You can get this book free if you go to my newsletter and you sign up for it. It's totally free. And then I have the link down in the comments in the YouTube box. That's been really effective. Another thing that I've done is I've collaborated with other people a lot. Like, when I did the INF Summit, that brought in a lot of people to my email newsletter, because, not only were Jazz and I promoting that, but everybody who did the summit, they were promoting it to their email list. So that's actually a really nice idea. If you're like, I just want to build my numbers a little bit faster, think about the other writers and artists and it could even be like 3 people. It doesn't have to be huge. It'd be like 3 to 5 people. People people you like their art, you like their books, whatever it is. What kind of project could you do together where you all expose each other to each other's email lists? Like, could you do a big free gift giveaway where, each of you puts in something, it can be a small something, and then you each email your email list like, hey, I'm doing this giveaway with my writer artist friends, and we're each giving away something, you know? And then like, you just, here's the link. Like if you want their free gift, like if you want Natasha's free gift, here's the link to her newsletter, sign up. If you want David's free gift, here's the link to his newsletter. You don't have to have this big technical, you know, glossy giveaway page. You could literally just put the links to your separate newsletters in the email. It can be really casual. It can be really fun. Let's see. And then Joan says, free short story sounds fun. Yeah, my friend Amanda, who does that, she actually said when she started out, she was worried it would be pressure, but she really likes it now. Jerry Lynn says, do we need a newsletter software service to build a list? How do we make sure we properly have their consent? So I use MailChimp. I will say I don't really love MailChimp, but it's okay. And MailChimp does the GDRP stuff for you. You know, all that stuff is taken care of for you. I've heard MailerLite is really good, and I'm thinking of switching to MailerLite. Again, MailChimp, MailerLite, it's going to be like anything else. You're going to get on it and be like, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't figure this out. This is really hard. And then slowly you'll be like, okay, I kind of think I get it. I don't like it, you know, but just know there's going to be that learning curve. But most of this stuff is pretty intuitive, or you can Google it. You can also hire somebody to help you with this stuff. Like, check out Fiverr. There's people on Fiverr who do everything. You could just be like, hey, I just want someone who's going to like set up the mailing list, like set up my MailChimp account and then link it to my website. And then when they're done, you go in and change the passwords and it's all set. Let's see. Lisa says, don't be afraid of freebie hunters too. When you create your newsletter, par for the course, I stopped calling them freebie hunters and started calling them message spreaders, as in they might say to others, this lady's weird, but you might like her stuff. Totally. And that's the thing. Whenever you do a summit or a giveaway or a new video on YouTube or whatever it is, you're going to have people who come in just for the free gift and then unsubscribe. That's cool. Whatever. Why not? Joan says, Amazon will give you specs, this measurement for the spine, this measurement for the front, back. Yeah, exactly, Joan. Like Amazon will give you all of that stuff. And you can work with your cover designer too. Usually your cover designer will just need to know how many pages the book is for the spine width. So you can be like, it's 290 pages. And he's like, cool, I can work with that. Krista says, regarding following others' work, sometimes when I'm browsing an interesting blog, I'll have an urge to be a part of the larger conversation they're starting. Logically, I know I could comment, but it doesn't feel sufficient. I want to have a fireside chat or write a follow-up essay, so I often end up doing nothing. How can I make sure the overwhelm doesn't stop me from making good connections with other writers? So Krista, if you're feeling that, like if you're reading someone's blog and you're like, I am really into this, like I'm into this idea, I'm into this person, I want to have a fireside chat, you should email them. Email them and tell them that. Be like, I loved your piece and I would love to work with you on something in the future. I don't know what that is, but I just wanted to introduce myself. I wanted to let you know I'm here, you know, and I would love to work with you on something. Some people you will get nothing back and you'll feel rejected and you're like, I did something wrong. Some people you will though. And this is why it's important to have a website, because if you can say, hey, like I'm Krissa and here's my website, and right there they can click on like, oh, here's your about page, and that's what Krissa looks like, and she's a normal person and she seems sane. I mean, we all kind of do this scan of people on the internet, you know, rather than you're just like a faceless name coming out of them, you know, coming at them out of the email either. If you have that website and you're just like, hey, I like your stuff, I feel like we're doing similar things, you know, a lot of times, like I will just jump on a Zoom call with somebody sometimes, you know, or people will email me out of nowhere and they're like, oh yeah, I write on holistic health and stuff. If I get a really good vibe from them or I'm like digging their stuff, I'm like, let's schedule a Zoom call. You know, that's how Jazz and I ended up doing the summit. That's how I do a lot of my stuff. And that's how I've made a lot of my connections. Like I just talk to people. Let's see. Okay. So let's see. Louis says Charles Manson knew what he was doing. Lawrence Apollo. I know. I always end up bringing Charles Manson. That's my weird thing. Like I was a bridesmaid in a wedding and I started talking about Charles Manson during the reception and it was not good. Okay, let's see. Charles Manson, a lot of Charles Manson content. Okay, let's see. Beth says, I can see potential for getting so caught up in the business end of publishing marketing work and producing new work. How do you find the sweet spot and keep balanced? Especially when some of us are still dealing with writing procrastination because of that perfectionism we talked about. So for me, Beth, I don't do a whole ton of marketing. I really don't. Like, I'll do a big thing every now and again, and then I'll do some little things. So like, for instance, like this year, I did the summit with Jazz in February. That was a big thing. That took a lot of work. And it was sort of like background work. Like, it was always running in the background, but it was months and months. So that was like my big thing. I think I've done one 99-cent sale, and then I've created 2 video courses and done some classes. For me, that was like a huge year, you know. But if you go to my YouTube channel, I don't have hundreds and hundreds of videos. I think I have like 30 videos. So do what you can, but be realistic about it too. A lot of times people are like, well, I want to make videos for YouTube, but I need professional lighting and I have to get a professional, you know, setup and a camera. You don't. You can make, like, you can use your phone, you know. And in my video course, my business course, I say, like, use your phone so much, and people are emailing me like, well, why should I use my phone and not a professional camera? And I'm just like, just because you can right now. You don't have to wait to buy some piece of equipment and get hung up there. You can just make a video real quick. So a lot of times, like, the marketing stuff doesn't have to be this big planned out thing. You know, just write a blog post that's not perfect. Be like, I'm going to spend a morning writing this blog post. It's going to be super conversational. I'm just going to write it. It's not going to be perfect. If you guys go to my blog, read my blog post, and you'll notice my endings are horrible. I am awful at ending blog posts. I'm just like, if you feel that way, it's okay. Like, that's because I hate ending stuff. I'm like, I don't know. I just have to get this out the door. My blog posts are not perfect. Yours don't have to be either. Your videos don't have to be perfect. That goes a long way. You know, stuff doesn't have to be perfect. Just make something and just put it on the internet. Let's see. Robin says, I read a great memoir about the youngest member of Charles Manson's family. It's called Member of the Family by Diane Lake. I have that sitting on my bookshelf. I just ordered it like 3 weeks ago. Joan says, look, you guys, we just have to murder 4 people and say we did it for Lauren. Let's see. Okay, so Erin says, I tend to write in wildly different genres and sometimes even wildly different styles. I really don't want to invent a pen name for every single one. How do you warn people that this is nothing like the story you really enjoyed reading last time? So first of all, I wouldn't assume that they read the story last time. All of this is going to go into the packaging, right? So if you put out book 1 and it's a YA fantasy, right? And then you put out book 2 and it's dark erotica. They're going to have, first of all, 2 totally different covers. The book cover is so important. The colors are going to be different. The tone is going to be different. And you guys know, you guys are readers. You're huge readers. A romance book cover, like a lighthearted, funny romance book cover, looks totally different than like a dark fantasy thriller book cover, right? So first of all, it's the cover. Then it's the title. The title says a lot. And then you're going to have your blurb. And you don't need to say in the blurb, like, I know last time, guys, that I wrote this funny, lighthearted romance, but, you know, this time it's different. You can just really clearly and accurately summarize the book that they're looking at right now. And you can just, you can trust them that they're going to grasp, this is dark fantasy. This is not similar to a middle grade magical adventure. But it's going to be in the packaging, really. Let's see. Okay, so Charlene says, all this information on self-publishing is great. Thank you. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts or insights to share from INF people who've been in the traditional scene and how that works for them. So I have a client right now who's in the traditional scene, Charlene. She writes historical fiction, and she's great. She just released her 2nd novel, I think, last year. But right now, she wants to write something different. Not that she never wants to write historical fiction again. She's really into it, but she also wants to explore different things as an artist. So that's kind of an impasse she's come to with her agent, because her agent wants to sell historical fiction, which is why she took her on in the first place. I also worked with a woman, a few years ago now, and she was traditionally published, and she came to me because the publishing house had assigned an editor to her, and she couldn't stand the editor. The editor wanted her to change everything. She wanted her to change the ending and the main character. And, you know, this client was just like, this is going to rip my heart out. Like, I don't even want to publish this book if I'm going to have to change all this stuff. So it's kind of a mixed bag, you know. I know that, like, my client who wrote the historical fiction novels, she had a good experience for those first two novels. Now she's thinking about leaving traditional publishing. And there are so many options these days with self-publishing that a lot of writers are leaving. So I don't know. I don't really have any good news on that front. But again, I'm not traditionally published, and I only know like a handful of people who are or were. So I'm not the best person to talk to you about that. Let's see. Gina says, do you have any thoughts on publishing with an indie press as compared to self-publishing or traditional? Well, the thing is, going with an indie press can be good, but a lot of times indie presses shut down, you know, so it depends. If it's like a long-standing, really successful indie press, like if it's City Lights bookstore, say the City Lights printing press, it's kind of going to be even more competitive than getting an agent, right? Because, you know, they're so long-standing, they're so famous, they're so successful. Newer indie presses, they might not be around in 5 years. One of my good writer friends, Dario Cielo, he had his own printing press, you know, for years. And then finally, and he did well, like he was publishing like, you know, science fiction and spec fic, and he loved it. But after a while he was like, it just was too overwhelming. And so he had to shut it down. So there might be some stickiness there. Like if the press shuts down and then you're like, well, you know, do I get like the leftover copies that you guys still have? Or like, do all the rights revert to me? For me personally, I wouldn't go back from self-publishing. Everything's mine. I control everything. I just wouldn't do it any other way. Let's see. Beth says, are you sure you aren't an INFP, Lauren? Because I hate endings. I know. Let's see. Melissa says, how do you get to the point that you could just talk to people as an INF? It makes sense from a marketing standpoint, but that feels very intimidating. Marketing is such an extrovert thing. Okay, so here's the thing. If you are going into, say, Twitter, if you're like, I'm going to talk to people and I have to be really witty and I have to be really smart and I have to like give them a good conversation, right? I have to impress them. That's going to be an extrovert thing. You're going to be trying to like sing and dance and like do some tap dancing. And that is not at all like what I talk about. And a lot of people have that thing about Twitter where they feel like they have to be really witty. Like I think back in the early years, Twitter got this reputation where there were like these funny accounts and, you know, like shit my dad says and stuff. And people would just read the accounts because they were so funny. If you go to my Twitter account, and all of you should, read my tweets and replies. And you can go back years. I've like said one witty thing ever. I don't say witty things. Most of the time, I don't interact that much. I just say like, thank you, or like, that's cool. Or if I reach out to somebody, I'll be like, hey, I like that poem on your bio. You can say really mundane things. Making friends with people, reaching out to people, interacting with people, it's not about you being extroverted. It's not about you impressing people or charming people. It's about you poking someone and say, hey, I think you're interesting. And then being receptive to what comes back and just being nice to them. That sounds so simple. We live in a world where no one's interested in anyone else. Everyone's just trying to get their voice heard. So most people are completely starved for genuine interest. That's what, like, you can do this anywhere. You could go to a party and just start talking to somebody and ask them questions about anything. Like within a minute, they're going to tell you something they're interested in. They might be like, yeah, I do deep sea diving. If you're like, wow, that's really cool. I think you're really cool for doing that. Tell me more. How did you get into that? What do you think about it now? Is it dangerous? You know, did you have to fight your parents to do it? If you just like are genuinely interested, they're going to love you. Like, they're gonna be like, oh my God, this person cares. This person actually gives a shit about my life. You know, I'm not saying you do this in a fake way. Like if you actually are like, I hate deep sea diving. Like I can't even put on you know, but if you're like, I could be somewhat interested in deep sea diving for the next 15 minutes, give it a go. Talk to the person about their stuff. And that's why I say, only talk to people you genuinely are interested in. Only talk to people that you're like, yeah, I think that their thing is cool, or I think what they're doing is cool. They seem nice. And tell them like, hey, I see you have a petition going to end slavery, you know, in Nigeria. That's cool. How'd you get into that? Like, is it hard? You know, like, do you ever doubt yourself? Like, don't be afraid to ask questions. They might think you're weird. If they think you're weird, they'll just stop talking to you. If they think you're cool back, you know, they'll keep talking to you. You don't have to do much though. You just kind of are like friendly and nice. That's it. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to do a couple more questions. Like, let's see. Yeah, Aaron says, I make a habit of noticing cool things about strangers and complimenting them, just like in the grocery store or wherever. The smiles I get back inspire me to do it more. That's exactly it, Aaron. So, Melissa, that's what I'm talking about. You're just nice to people. You're just genuinely nice to you. Just notice something about them and you're like, oh, I like your shoes. Where did you get them? Like, I don't, see that many people wearing zebra striped shoes, and it just makes me happy. Laura says, do you ever worry that too many people will reach back out to you? As an INFJ, how do you deal with the overwhelm of having to answer back so many people? This is boundaries. This is boundaries, Laura. So I don't answer back everyone. If someone like emails me or messages me and I immediately feel kind of resentful or like, oh, anxiety, or like, oh, it feels like they're clinging to me or sucking on me. There's like a little vampire energy. I don't have any interaction. They might get their feelings hurt. Not my problem. They're the one bringing vampire energy to the table. Even if it's just slight, they're bringing vampire energy to the table, and me ignoring them, that's feedback from their environment. They need that. Other people, I'm not like checking my phone constantly for emails. Like, I'm not emailing people night and day. I set aside certain times that I email. I've been really on the email this month because of this class. But usually when people email me, they probably notice I take 2, 3, 4 days to get back to them, because I'm not like, I have to email everybody immediately. Same thing with texting. I don't have to text people back immediately. I set aside time. Like, I'll do like, I'm going to work on email this morning. I'm feeling pretty good. I'll set aside an hour and I'll work on some email, and then I'm done. I'm done for the rest of the day. The email's shut down. So I don't feel like I have to answer back everyone. And also, I send a lot of people really short replies. A lot of people will send me like pages and pages, like, I read your book, it changed my life. Here's my entire life and everything that's happened to me. And I will just literally be like, hey, thanks so much for the kind words. I'm glad the book had a positive impact on you, Lauren. That's it. It's not my responsibility to send them 10 pages back. I'm not trying to get into a pen pal thing. Let's see. Gina says, I met you on Twitter. A lot of you guys probably met me on Twitter. Let's see. Melissa says, online relationships can sometimes feel like having open energetic cords. So I feel as though, like Laura says, it could be overwhelming. That's where the boundaries come in again. And if you feel that, like if you get that message from someone and you ignore them, but you're like, oh, I still feel them. And that's something that happens to INFs a lot. Like, I feel them, but I must be crazy. I'm overreacting. You're not overreacting. They're in your energy field. They're like this little mosquito. They're just in there. They're just buzzing around. They're just trying to like get their little sucker in you. You can actually sit, picture your energy field, and you'll feel them. Sometimes it'll be an image, or you'll get something about them. But then you say, you are to leave now. Here's the door. You are to leave. You are not welcome here. You don't have permission to be here. You show them the door courteously, but you are the one who decides who's in your energy field. No one can stay there without your permission, And I know sometimes you really have to like throw up the wall. Like, I've had people where they have like tried to come into my field so strongly that I've gotten angry. And when I'm like, oh, I'm angry, then I'm like, oh, they're really trying to get in there. And I just like throw up the wall, stormtroopers all around, spikes on the top of the wall. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I needed to like shove them out. And I've done that to a couple of people where I've just shoved them out of my field. And I'm like, no, you're not to be here. And then Natasha says, I think I confuse my energy field with paranoia. That's why I want to say, when you're on social media, come to it from one of the higher fields. Because if you're in shame or guilt or fear, the paranoia will come in. Like, people will just be genuinely nice to you and you're like, I don't know if I can trust them. They seem creepy, or what do they want? Because you're in that lower energy field. If you're in a pretty good place, if you're in like at least neutrality or acceptance, and you're getting that vampire energy, you can be like, I started out today pretty good. I was in a pretty okay place. I talked to this random dude on Twitter and I'm not feeling okay now. And that's the difference. It was that random dude. Then you can kind of pinpoint, and then you can be like, okay, he's going to get removed. He's not to be here. So the boundaries are really, really important. Read the boundaries book, The Internet Fast. You don't have to text people back immediately. Put in buffers. You get emails, give yourself at least a day. Say, I don't respond to any emails until a day later. I don't respond to any text until 2 hours has passed. You know, I don't call people back. I do that all the time. I have all these buffers, and then it lets kind of like the energy settle. And sometimes I'll read an email and then be like, no, I'm not going to respond until tomorrow. And I'll let that energy settle and I'll sleep on it. Be like, okay, I can answer them back. I can just send them like a courteous response. And then other people, I'm like, no. And once you get better at boundaries, when people reach out to you, you'll notice the language they use. You know, you'll be like, oh, that's interesting. Like they're using really aggressive language. Like they compared themselves to a military general in this first email to me, and they're talking about recruiting me as a soldier. That's weird. You know, you won't override that stuff. Okay, guys, so we went a little bit late tonight. I'm sorry, I wanted to get to all those questions. So like I said, any of you who are interested in my video course, please email me about it, because I will find a way to get that to you. Even if you don't have one penny to your name, I'm going to get it to you because it will be helpful to you. So if you're like, this stuff is resonating with me, I want to learn how to build my email list, I want to do all this stuff, talk to me about it, email me. And if you have any questions about anything else, email me. For the rest of the week, I'm going to be pretty on it with the email. Probably at the end of this week, I'm going to go into like a turtle hole, which I always do after a class, where I'm just sort of like, and I probably won't be on the email nearly as frequently. So if you have questions, get them in this week, because I'm going to still really be on it. Laura says, this was great, Lauren. I love this course. I learned so much. Yeah, thank you guys so much. Oh, Maria, will there be a writing session on Thursday? Yes, there will. There will be our last silent writing session this Thursday, 5 to 6:15 p.m. as usual. I'll send out the Zoom invite. I also want to say, you guys, because we've had such success with that, I'm really thinking I'm going to do a November class, but I'm going to do it kind of differently. So I'm going to sort of design it. If you're doing NaNoWriMo, it'll work. If you're not doing NaNoWriMo, it'll work. But I think I'm going to do an hour Zoom every day for November. And it can be your creative time. It can be your writing time. It can be your NaNoWriMo time. But I'm going to be there every day for 30 days on Zoom, and kind of have it like a sort of like a class. Like I'll probably do a live Q&A as well, like once a week for the month of November. I'm still hammering all that out. But yeah, if you're interested in that, I think all of you are on my newsletter list. You'll see that. But if that sounds good to you, like email me and let me know your ideas for it, or if that does sound good to you. I think I'm going to do like maybe half the week morning sessions and half the week evening, and then people can drop in and out. Again, I'm still hammering out the details, but I think it would be fun. Tracy says, this has been fabulous. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Gina says, that sounds great. Paula says, awesome, definitely interested. Yeah, I think it just sounds fun. That's how I usually create most of my ideas. Like, it sounds fun. I actually have a book I really want to work on, too. So I'm like, if I worked on it for an hour every day for 30 days and I had to show up. So, yeah, I think it would be fun. And yeah, like I said, if you're doing NaNoWriMo, it'll work. And if you're not, if you just want creative time every day, I think it'll work. Anyway, email me, you guys, if you have ideas about that. Siobhan says, sign me up. Thank you guys so much. And like I said, I'm keeping the Facebook group open as well. So that's not going to go away. That will be there. Please continue. Oh, the last thing I want to say, I know some of you have told me privately that you found other great classes you're taking, that like you sort of had epiphanies through this class and then you found another class. If you guys know of other great classes, post them in the Facebook group. And I know Cindy O'Donnell has a silent writing group too, and I'm going to ask her to repost the details of that in the Facebook group. But if you guys happen upon other opportunities, classes, workshops, like anything you think that people will be interested in, throw it into the group, please. That's what it's there for. Like, let's share those resources. So post away. Okay, I will see you guys on Thursday, and I will see you guys in the Facebook group. Thank you so much, and good night.